I may be worried that I don't go to the doctor, especially when I'm well, right? And a very inspiring community service for sure. So I guess I'm going to talk about a different kind of community service over in the Free Center of Performing Arts, where we do programming for the community of a slightly different kind, and hopefully providing a kind of help, I suppose, or cultural, spiritual help. So I teach in the theater arts department here, and I'm directing the season opener this year, which is Aristophanes' classic play, Lysistrata. And so when I heard that the library was looking for people to give these talks, I thought, well, maybe this would be an opportunity to talk a little bit about the production, in part as a shameless marketing getting you to production to a performance, but also perhaps to give you a sort of behind-the-scenes look at the kind of research and preparation that goes into a theatrical production. And I think people may not be aware of. I do traditional scholarship as well. I publish articles, etc. And I can tell you with absolute confidence the preparation that goes into a production like this is easily equivalent to the kind of research I do to publish an article. In fact, rarely have I not thought at some point in the rehearsal process for a show I direct, I've got to write this and publish it, because I could definitely get an article out of this before time goes by, and I don't do that. So I wanted to start first by, in case you don't know the story of Lysistrata, most of you probably do, but this is a play written over 2,000 years ago in ancient Athens by Aristophanes, who wrote something called Old Comedy. Old Comedy was really political satire, very topical. The plays that we have remaining of his extant are full of all these unfamiliar references to us, politicians and local characters, cultural and social figures. The play was set in Aristophanes' own city of Athens, which is unusual because other plays, like with titles like The Birds, The Frogs, The Clouds, are set in sort of fantasy places. But this one is set in his own city of Athens in 411 BC, when he produced the play. And at that time, the Peloponnesian War had been raging for about 20 years. Right? This is a civil war in Greece, pitting Greek against Greek, predominantly the Athenians and their allies versus the Spartans and their allies. Okay? Aristophanes was a real critic of the war. It had caused extreme suffering, including in the recent past, just prior to 411, there had been a very devastating battle in Sicily, where the Athenians had experienced tremendous losses. And there's references in the play to that. Anyway, in this fantasy resolution to the war, Aristophanes imagines that the women of Greece, fed up with their men always away at war, decide to undertake a sex strike to stop the war. So Lysistrata first is challenged with getting women on board, because in ancient Greece, it was believed that women are much more sexually driven than men. Also alcoholics. and some of that humor remains in our translation, and frankly, some of it I've cut out. It's very difficult, actually, for a feminist director to direct Lysistrata, and one of I didn't pick the play, actually. I have to be told. It sort of fell to me to direct, and I love the Greeks, and I've always wanted to do a Greek tragedy, but this one fell to me, and I thought, well, this is going to be the challenge. You know, one of the challenges of my career is to make sense of this. So I'll expand on that in a minute. Anyway, they undertake the sex strike. She gets the Spartan women and all the Athenian women and all the Greek women on board, and the rest of the plot follows, as you might imagine it would, by the second act. The physical effects of the sex strike have taken hold on the men, and one of the characteristics of all productions of Lysistrata is the appearance of these giant phalluses on the men by the second act, which you really can't cut out of Lysistrata. You can imagine them physically in any number of shapes, forms, or colors, but you can't cut the phalluses out of Lysistrata. Okay, so a little bit of a spoiler there. They will be there, okay, in some form or fashion. So that's the basic plot. So the first thing I have to do as a director is to be sure that I am completely competent with the play and the playwright in their own day. okay? My style of directing, typically for a classic, including Shakespeare, is to reimagine that classic so that it makes sense to me in my time. That's just my own aesthetic. But the first thing I have to do is make sure I understand Aristophanes and this play in his own time. I've taught this play for years. I would say almost every year of my 20-some-odd teaching career, I have taught this play. But I can tell you that when you sit down to direct a play, it is different. It's the same with teaching anything. You guys know you teach something, but then you go to write about it, right? And it's a different level of expertise. So there were things about this play that I had just sort of skated over, right? The detailed political situation in 411 BC. The fact that this Sicilian expedition had been a complete disaster, and that the Athenians were really becoming very worried that they were going to lose them. And, you know, we model our democratic ideals in part on ancient Greece, on the idea that they had accomplished, at least in the 5th century BC, this extraordinary democracy. And indeed they had. But it was fairly short-lived, right? That democracy was based on the idea that there were no professional politicians. Would that we could go back. Or maybe we have. That was both a good and a very challenging. It was a good thing, but also a very challenging thing. That meant that essentially, and this is simplifying the history, but you know, you were elected by lot to participate in this huge assembly of 500 men. And yes, women, it was only men, right? Male citizens only, no resident foreigners, no women. But 500 men at a time made the most important decisions over everything regarding Athenian life, including war decisions, right? And these 500 men were cycled in and out with absolutely no real expertise or training in politics, right? So you have something like the Sicilian expedition being voted on by people who really may not have really been all that capable. And so what happened shortly after, right before Aristophanes wrote this play, is that they slid in this group of older statesmen called commissioners of public safety, for lack of a better translation, to kind of override the assembly and to start making decisions for Athens. And it was essentially the beginning of the slow decline of democracy. Those commissioners are represented in the play by a single character, a commissioner of public safety. And he's the most important male character in the play, although I think the choruses are really, in some ways, the most important characters in a Greek play. The commissioner of public safety is loud, misogynistic, bullyish, and has nothing good to say about women through the entire play. He might just appear in our production to look something like a certain Republican politician. Just saying. So things like that were part of the research that I did before I even got to the theatrical part. Along the way, I'm also reading up on production history. So I'm fully familiar with what's been done with the play in contemporary significant productions. A lot of times the play has been set in the 60s for kind of obvious reasons, and sort of correspondences with women's liberation and that kind of thing, anti-war, have been suggested, right? Sometimes the play is directed, particularly by women directors, and takes a more serious route to be a real anti-war statement. And those productions were very interesting to me, but they weren't funny, right? So my feeling is if I'm going to direct a comedy, it's going to be funny. Now, I've got 2 more weeks, so it might not be funny yet. Although gyrofalluses on stage give you a pretty good starting point for humor. So I sort of went into the next step, or one of the big steps I have to take, is to figure out how to make the play work for me, right? What is my personal way into this play? And as a woman, I have to say, this is a play written by a man 2,400 years ago, performed by men, with a lot of humor at the expense of women. Aristophanes wrote this play as a fantasy. It was a real place, but like the rest of his plays, the plot was fantasy. And by that I mean no man sitting in that performance of how many of thousands of people in that huge arena thought this could ever happen. A woman in Athens could no more have an idea about how to stop the war or replace the male politicians
and fix the problem. That was a complete fantasy. Right? Well, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? I have real women, wonderful actresses playing these parts, the part of Lysistrata and her best friend in Lampedo, Spartan. So is it about a gender war? Well, yeah, to some extent it is, and we're still in that war. We still talk about the wage gap, and we still do talk about these things. So you can't do this play without having that resonate. But the more I read about why Aristophanes wrote this play, and the more I thought about it, I decided this is a political story. This isn't really a story mostly about gender. This is a story about a city that is completely divided, whose citizens are angry, who feel they have not been listened to. Sound familiar? Yeah. The divided choruses, the men and the women, right? Most of Aristophanes' choruses are a single chorus. In this play, it's very unique. They are divided, male and female. But in our production, yes, the men talk about, hating the women, and the women talk about hating the men. But really, it's a matter of an electorate that's been divided. And that's so far apart, it is unimaginable to resolve it, right? And so, yes, in a way, the male chorus is sort of like Trump supporters. And the female chorus is sort of like Bernie supporters, okay? And Lysistrata's not Hillary Clinton. She can't be. She's her own character in her own story. But there are lots of resonances of contemporary politics. In our scenic design, we have a sort of Acropolis that could also be sort of the Supreme Court, right? With giant projection screens that will project these beautiful murals of contemporary political images. In the central scene of the play, Lysistrata and the Commissioner of Public Safety will have what is essentially a debate, an agon, right, in the Greek. And it's a very long scene, and lots of different things happen in our production. But at some point, it will become a presidential debate, absolutely, which will have happened, I think, about 4 days before the production opens. So the timing is sort of perfectly relevant. The other really exciting thing about the production, in fact, for me, the most exciting thing, is the students that are involved. So Greek theater was very musical, and I think we forget that sometimes. It was full of music and dance. Both tragedies and comedies incorporated a chorus. I've already referred to the chorus, the divided chorus of Lysistrata. And that chorus sang and danced. And it was really the musical component expression of the meaning of the play. So I don't think you can do this style of theater without thinking about that. And so from the beginning, I was determined to compose music for the choral parts, and as well as choreographed dance. We have a sophomore musical theater major who's also a music composition major, Stephen Copley. And he and I worked through the summer together, coming up with ideas for this music. We were very inspired by the current, very popular musical, Hamilton, which takes a historic subject and has created, through rap and hip-hop, a storytelling style that really provides this sort of, multifaceted resonance. You're hearing the story of Alexander Hamilton and the Founding Fathers, but you're seeing Thomas Jefferson as an African American, and you're seeing women play men that they never could have played, and it's all sort of interesting. So very inspired by that mashup, Stephen and I worked together. Basically, this is a process where I say, Stephen, this is the scene where this song happens. This is what the song has to do. This is what it means. I had to pick a translation. It took me a long time. I read a lot of different translations of the play, knowing that we wanted to do this, compose music for the lyrics in the text. So I picked a translation that was most lyrical, so that he could use those words. We have really taken a translation that was translated really in the 60s. Douglas Parker. It's a very famous translation. And to me, it's the most lyrical. And we have really not changed any words. That's what's very exciting. This student has taken these ancient words, obviously translated, and composed some wonderful music. Then we had to think about dance. In some cases, Our student choreographer, Josh Hurd, who's also fabulous, he's a senior musical theater major and dance minor, has taken some of Stephen's music and composed choreography for it. But Josh's real talent is hip hop. And Stephen wasn't going to compose hip hop music, just didn't. That's not what was happening. So I realized there's a culminating scene at the end of Act 1 where the two choruses are battling one another, and that it really needed to be communicated not through text but through dance. So I said, look, we're going to mix in pop music so that you can really choreograph, what you need. And so it's a mixture now. We've got original music composed as well as pop music. So at the end of the first act, I just have to tell you this because it's really very exciting. All the women in the company, it's a company of 20, so there are 13 women, are dancing to Beyonce Run the World. And it's really fierce. And what's very exciting, when I cast the show, I didn't consult Josh on all the casting, it was just a chorus because I thought that's what's going to dance. But he came to me a few weeks ago and said, I really want all the women to dance. Look at that! Because they're not all experienced dancers. But it's fabulous for them. It's a fabulous experience. And I think it's going to end Act 1 very nicely. Yeah, I think I've covered everything. The rehearsal process takes only about 6 weeks. We have 6 weeks to put it all together with the actual performers. We are in week 4 right now of the rehearsal process. Next week is our final week in the rehearsal hall. And then we move into the space and we add costumes, lighting, sound, projections, and all of that technical stuff. That's a very intense few days. We don't have a lot of time to do that. September 29th, the play opens, and it only runs one weekend, as do most of the shows, Thursday through Sunday. So, yeah, students are doing a lot of social media. They put a Twitter hashtag out there, hashtag ONU sex strike. Should get some attention, right? So yeah, I'm excited about it, especially with the students involved. But that's in a nutshell what has gone into it. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any. Yes.
As a theatrical director, can you compare and contrast what putting on the play is compared to writing a fiction, a piece of work of fiction?
Well, I'm not a playwright or a novelist, so I can't really speak to that. I can compare writing a scholarly article to directing a play. That I can compare because I've done both. And I think at the research level, it's very similar actually. But I always learn a tremendous amount about the play in the rehearsal hall when I'm directing, and when human beings are bringing these characters to life, you have to think in ways that you don't think about otherwise. Don't think about, right? We've cut a lot of the text, actually, because at the end of the day, although I love Douglas Parker's translation, it's still very literary in places, and that doesn't play. That doesn't play. And because we've found so many wonderful ways to add music and dancing, you can say, it's like film, right? You take a play by Shakespeare and you put it on film and you can cut a third of the play because you can tell so much more through the storytelling with film, right? The same with dance, music, and theater. So we cut a lot of the text. So it's a three-dimensional human medium, right? Which is very different from the written word, we hope. So. We spend a lot of time talking about that in the rehearsal process. We give them things to read as well. Of course, their training makes them to some extent prepared in terms of music and dance and acting. But a lot of it has to do with the rehearsal process and encountering those questions as we go, making sense of them as we go. I mean, listen, in a way, the play is very presentational. It's very Saturday Night Live. It's almost sketch comedy. And the woman playing Lysistrata, Madeline Gish, senior musical theater major, beautiful actress, is a very good actress and wants to make real sense of this role. And in our conversations recently, she said, I'm challenged because she seems like so many different people in different parts of the play. And Aristophanes didn't think about, he was having, some guy played the role, right? He wasn't making actual real sense of the role in the way that this actress is. So that's a real challenge. And we've actually, in the very first scene of the play, it's the hardest scene for me to direct because it's a bunch of women getting together to undertake this sex strike, and they're making jokes at each other's expense, which are very, very bawdy and off color. And we all know that women can be awful to other women. I won't disagree with that. But the way in which these women are making jokes is just, we just don't do that. You know what I mean? And we know it's a bunch of guys making fun of women, right? So we've had to really work on that scene and try to make it work with, with us. And so you can see what you think about it. We've had to cut quite a few of the jokes, but yeah, they're good at it. These actors, they're good at asking the right questions. Yeah. We should stop. Yeah.
Other questions, please. I just have a quick question. You said that there's such a short turnaround time for rehearsals. So what do you do in auditions? Yes.
For this particular slot, we've taken to auditioning in the spring. So obviously we don't include the incoming freshman class, which is fine because that gives them a few weeks to get settled before they're in a play. So all of these students were cast in May before they left for the summer. And that meant that I could send them some materials, which I did, and talk to them a little bit about the production concept and so forth. So we started the second day of classes in rehearsals. We rehearse about 19 hours a week. That's on top of faculty and student full-time schedules. So it's a lot. And then the last 2 weeks of the rehearsal process is a lot more than 19 hours. Well, thank you very much.
Want to thank our speakers again. Your shameless marketing employee totally worked on me. So thank you, Dr. Robbins and Dr. Martin. And thank you for all of you that showed up. We're going to have another Ada Chat in October, and please don't forget October 20th at 4 p.m. So if that was interesting, please join us again. And you can keep the back.